Well, what a beautiful November's... Well, it's not November. It's almost November. But what a beautiful morn. I think it's about 10:30, something like that. But, you know, very pleasant, beautiful. A beautiful autumn day. And so anyway, gonna have a little bit of a chat about how and why we think like we do. And so most of you guys know that you're familiar with my interest in gathering fungi. And before then there was an interest, and still is of course, in trees and all the differences of the barks and the leaves. And I'm forever inspecting all the trees and the leaves and everything, because initially I wanted to see what different varieties of trees leafed like, and then I started to realise that there was a very broad classic example of any given leaf. But like human beings, you know, there's a great deal of discrepancy. I mean, do you call a human being somebody without arms and legs? When do we stop being human beings? You know, that's a very good question, isn't it? It's a philosophical question. When does a human being begin and when does a human being stop? If somebody is mentally retarded, catatonic and doesn't function at all, are they a human being? Well, their minds aren't human, they don't have functioning minds. The only thing with a catatonic is functioning is the body. They can digest and they can defecate and all that sort of thing. So the body's intelligence is still living, it's still functioning, but the cognition isn't working. The sentience, the human consciousness, the body can work from its unconscious intelligence. It doesn't need the everyday ego conscience to do that. And so is a human being someone that has both of those things and is perfectly functional. So I used to look at leaves and I'd find a particular leaf and I'd go, well, this is like an ash tree leaf. And I'd look for the ash tree. I'd like, there's no ash trees in 100 yards of where I found this leaf. You know, unless there's been a hurricane that's blown through here, how did this leaf get here? And then I'd start to look and think, well, have I made a mistake? Are any of these trees around here ash trees? And then I'd look at the bark and I'd look at the buds and I'd look at the twigs and I'd look at lots of stuff. And then I'd notice that, holy Moses, you know, this is an ash tree, but it's very, very different. And it's like when we look at cherry trees, cherry blossom trees. Cherry trees have the grain of the bark going round, and it's very often smooth, and it's like purple with you know, silver or grey ribs in it. That's the young level, but when the cherry tree is very mature, it loses all that, and it becomes completely corrugated like a regular tree, with the corrugations going vertical instead of horizontal. So it completely changes the way it presents itself to the world through its bark. And so I've come to know this. Then when we look at fungi, this is why you know, amateurs should always be very, very careful when they are consuming any of these fungi, because some of them are deadly, of course. And so this is why, as amateur mycologists, it's a very good idea just to eat the ones that we can't make any serious mistake with. I mean, we start off with like the chicken of the woods and the puffballs and all the varieties of field mushroom, because the only one that's going to upset your stomach is the yellow stainer. There's a couple of mushrooms that stain yellow. Those ones will upset your stomach. They won't kill you, so therefore you can eat all of these brown gilled white mushrooms that you find around at the side of the road and on plain parks. They love grassy areas like this. If you find those trees within woodlands, you have to be very careful of what you've got. And you have to be especially careful that you've not got a mushroom with white gills, because it could be Amanita phalloides, destroying angel, or death cap. Anyway, in relation to human beings, we go from the cradle to the grave uploading information, and at every single point in our journey of uploading information, it's just like a computer. If the computer's uploaded Windows 95, then it's vastly more restricted as compared to Windows 11. And this is the same with a human being. But with a computer which got Windows 95, if you're using that as an interface, then it has X amount of information, and if you don't know that there's a Windows 11, then you'd think, oh, the Windows 95 is cool, I can do all this different stuff, and it's really great. But then when you are introduced to the upgrade, then you can see that how shocking Windows 95 was. And this is the same as human beings. When they have a limited upload of information, and I'm always speaking about concentric circles of consciousness or intellect, because of course we start off on the inner circles, and then when we drop a pebble in a pond, we get the concentric circles rippling out, going larger and larger and larger and larger. As we evolve and as our consciousness expands, then we go out into the further and further extremities of these concentric circles. And when we are in the outer extremities, we know all the information which is within the circles inside our circle, but we have no idea of the information which is outside of our circle. Inside, we've been there and we've done it all, because like a pebble being dropped in, we started in the middle and then we've gone further and further and further out. And what takes us out? Well, our personal evolution, our experiences, our conditioning of our intellect and our cognition and all these sorts of things. Now, it doesn't necessarily follow that a very intellectual person, as far as an IQ test is concerned, is going to have an extended concentric circle, because there's lots of people, you know, like Brian Cox, the cosmologist, so stuck in his science that he wouldn't even remotely want to consider anything spiritual. And the reason why, first and foremost, is because they're not consciously awoken beings. They are intelligent in that they can read stuff, and then they can get a grasp of what is written, and then they can read scientific papers, and then they can understand them, you know, at a level. Probably more than most, because they've been trained in that realm. But when it comes to speaking about the paranormal, if they've had no experience in the paranormal, then they spiritually, consciously, they are dead. And so this is the whole thing, let the dead bury the dead. And so Brian Cox was once presented with some proof in relation to the Earth not being spherical. And this is a very difficult thing, people. And I don't know how many of you have ever looked into it, but when you do look into it, we get some very, very conflictory information. When it is said by scientists that the Earth's curvature drops down below the horizon 8 inches every mile on a flat terrain. Now, if you've got something which is 100 miles out, then it would have dropped down more than 6 feet. I don't know exactly the math, but maybe it's 10 feet, maybe it's 15. But it would have dropped below the visible horizon. And so we go, well, okay, well, that's proof then. That would be absolute proof. And so what we do is then, we look at the ship on the ocean. And then this is where Brian Cox says, look, you can see with your own eyes a ship going over the horizon. But people who have studied this flat earth go, well, look, you think you can, but it's an optical illusion. Because if you get a telescope, you see that that ship hasn't gone anywhere. You can still see it 50 miles out, and that is a physical impossibility. Brian Cox, please come and look through this telescope. We'll do this. Oh, I'm not going. That's just stupid. You see, they don't even want to look themselves, because it would blow their paradigm completely sky high. It will send shockwaves through their core which would probably kill them on the spot. If all of a sudden every single thing that they've learned through their PhDs and all this stuff they've been doing all their lives, professors in cosmology, when they discover that the Earth isn't in actual fact round, it's flat, and it can be proven to be flat because you put a laser across a region. I mean, they've done tests like in real time with one camera here, one camera there. They're speaking in real time like on phones, and one's got a laser, the other one's got a receiver, and they're going, okay, I'm going to turn the laser on anytime now, between now and the next 20 seconds. You tell me when you've received it there and then, so there can be no trickery. And so this guy turns on the laser, and then after like 7 seconds he goes, okay, it's it, and he goes, yeah, exactly, that's when I just turned it on. So you are receiving this laser, you are over the Hudson Bay, which is like 15 miles, you shouldn't be able to receive it at this height. What is going on? And so there's many things like this, people. It really is a conundrum. But what I put it down to is that the universe is a paradox. And the world is both round, spherical, and flat. Because when you believe that it's flat, you can find all the evidence that you'll ever need to marry up to your belief system. If you believe that it's spherical, you can find all the information that you want to believe in that. You will completely dismiss anything which isn't going to be conducive to the way in which you think and to your end goal. That's what people have done. Now, the reason why I mention that, I mentioned the tree identification, I mentioned the mushroom identification, and I give you that analogy and instantiation of what I'm saying here. When we look at religious dogma, it's exactly the same. When people have been indoctrinated with religious dogma into all these miracles and all the rest of it that's been going on, people who want to believe that, believe it. And they will never stop believing it because it makes them happy. And for them to stop believing it is going to, just like a pack of cards, send their world crashing down. Just like Brian Cox when he wouldn't look through the telescope, wasn't interested. And so we have to know that the belief facility within the human being is an exceedingly powerful thing. And I've often made videos expressing how powerful it is, because it is belief that creates the whole world. It is belief that creates the whole cosmos. It's human belief that have created the world as we see it. When we look into the philosophy of idealism, we will be confronted with irrefutable information which tells us that the world in actual fact is just an idea, and that there is nothing here Because look, if you say, oh, I can see a lamppost there, and I can see trees and leaves and this, that and the other. Well, are you seeing a lamppost? Or are you just thinking about two words, a lamp and a post? And that, in your estimation, means one of these. Take away lamp post, what's here? Oh, there's a metal tube. Take away metal tube, what is here? A tube. Take away tube, what is here? Now you've got me, and all this. Take away concepts, people. There is nothing here. Because it is our labels that bring everything into existence. Now, with religious dogma, they have written the most excruciatingly absurd stories. And we are supposed to just accept them and believe them. And the reason why they do this, I think, is because if they can get you believing that a man walked on water, a man rose from the dead, a man could actually rise up the dead, somebody could cast down a stick and it would turn into a snake, and all these sort of things. If through literature people can get people to believe that, then it's only the next step up the ladder of belief is to get them believing in an invisible man in the sky that's looking at everything you do and it's going to smite you if you step out of line. And so when you look at this, it's childish. It's kind of like, my old man used to tell me that his mother always used to tell him that Icky's under the bed. And Icky was some sort of a monster or something. And if the old man didn't go to bed and he was getting out, she used to say, Icky's under the bed. If you try and get out, Icky's going to get you. And so he used to lie, oh, fucking hell, Icky's under the bed. But of course, as he got a little bit older, he'd go, fuck you, Icky. You know, because I can't see you, you muppet. And so it's just a figment of imagination. And that's what this whole world is constructed out of, imagination. So in my book, I'm now 16 pages into the last chapter. And I am having to broach how it is that I have travelled on my path, which I've called Closer to God. Now, there is something supernatural. This whole thing is in actual fact supernatural, but we have been led to believe through the entirety of our lives that this is a corporeal world. And so it is that paradoxical thing. I mean, people could try to refute it by saying, look, well, can't you feel something here? Well, there is senses that we have. And there is something that stimulates our senses. But when you listen to the greatest of philosophers and the greatest of scientists, even these days, they are saying, well, look, I mean, it's very, very difficult to explain what's going on. But there's a guy called Donald Hoffman, and his hypothesis is that the world is like, it's just an interface. And he akins it to like looking at your computer. When you look at your computer, you think that there's pictures on there, there's videos on there, there's all those sorts of things on there. But in actual fact, there's nothing on there except representations of those. Now, this goes back to Schopenhauer's philosophy, because he was stating that it's all representation. It's will and representation. We will things into existence, and everything that we see is a representation of something that we have coined it to be. And so this is a representation of some sort of carnivorous tree. Then it represents something feeling a bit spiky and smelling in a certain way, and all these sort of things. And so we know that via our own representation, people's representation vastly differs. And so people's olfaction vastly differs, people's vision vastly differs, the way they see colours vastly differs, the way they interpret the world vastly differs. And so if we ask ourselves, well, is there a real objective world out here that doesn't change no matter who looks at it? No. It changes every single time any sentient creature looks at it, because it's entirely subjective experience. And so these levels of philosophy, they're very, very deep indeed. And it takes a long time to get your heads around them. You need to have a lot of depth within all this sort of knowledge. And so I'm just, you know, I've always got my eyes peeled. I think that's a yellow stainer. I can just tell by looking at it. And so if I just give it a little bit of a... Actually, no, it's looking more like a field mushroom because it's not staining instantly. You see, this is the thing. Lots of mushrooms, they look identical with one difference. Now, it is the saving grace of certain edible mushrooms that the ones that are mildly poisonous have one difference, and that one difference is that they will stain yellow when they are compromised on their flesh. But otherwise you'd never know, and so you couldn't eat any of them because you couldn't distinguish between the varieties. But then you see what happens is when you read about these, the write-up says that some people find them you know, to be upsetting to their stomachs. And so I've read this about parasol mushrooms. Some people will find them to be, you know, remotely a problem to our gastronomy, and then you might have a queasy feeling, you might vomit or something like this. But I have never done that. And so is there any truth there? Well, is it true for me, or is it not really a truth? It's just a probability of truth. And I think that's more like it, because there's so many things which are potential truths. And we can experience certain truths. I'll just think if I can just think of one off the top of my head, a potential truth. Oh, okay, let's just say like, that water's fucking freezing. And then someone just goes in and goes, what are you on about? Fucking, like, bath water. Well, your body temperature's 37 degrees, the same as mine. Why is it that I'm fucking freezing and you're perfectly cool with it? And I can see that you don't even think it's cold because your skin's not gone goose pimply. So there's another subjective truth. So everything is a subjective truth, people. And when it comes to religion, which of course, when we're dealing with religious zealots who will absolutely not accept anything else outside of their Jesus, simply because the last thing in their world that they want to happen is for their Jesus not to be true and real, because that would mean that their Jesus doesn't love them, their Jesus won't protect them, their Jesus won't be there when they die. What's going to happen to me? Am I going to go to hell? And all this sort of stuff. You know, you see what it's like? It's that desperation to have these beliefs. Just like Brian Cox with his desperation to hold on to his belief of his cosmology. And, you know, it becomes absurd. It really is absurd. And so I asked myself, well, why is it that we have so-called intelligent people that you know, who are in positions of power? And I remembered hearing, I used to listen to Congress a great deal, and I remembered the woman, she was a black woman, and she was sitting on the main bench, and she was the one with the hammer, you know, order, and all this sort of thing. And she says, I'm a big Bible person, I am. And so you could see that she was going to be governed by whatever she was addressing in that governmental body. She was going to be constrained by her belief, and if she encountered something which was in a conflict to her belief, then it was going to be her belief that superseded common sense. And these people are very, very prolific, particularly in America, and that's why you look at that country and you just go, what the fuck is happening? Because so many people, they believe in Satan. Satan's coming to get you. Satan's going to do this, and everything that they don't understand, it's Satan, you know, that's at the root and the helm of it all. It's like, you know, when any secret society is hiding behind closed doors, they're Satanists, and they're doing Satan rituals, and they're eating babies, because this is what it says in mythology, that, you know, they used to sacrifice babies. And so you've got some very, very disturbed people living in everyday circles, and this is why I can't tolerate them on this channel, and that's why I go, please vacate it, because we're not going to get along, because these people are absolutely in the thick of this silly, ridiculous dogma, and they will fight it with any silly, ridiculous level of their ridiculous reasoning. It's not even reasoning, it flies in the face of reason, but they use it as reason, and it's not reason. I mean, reason is when you deploy logic. You're not deploying logic, you're just deploying your stupid, frail emotional state, that you just want it to be like that, and you're going to say anything and twist anything to get it like that. And so one of the comments from one of these dudes, he reckons he'd read my book. And he says, oh, well, so you say that you've met Jesus and you know God. Well, just because you've seen green leprechauns on drugs. And I'm like, do you think Moses wasn't on any fucking drugs when he saw the burning bush? Do you think Moses wasn't on any fucking drugs when he supposedly threw down his staff and it turned into a snake? Do you think Moses wasn't on any fucking drugs when he reckoned he parted the Red Sea? Do you think that Isaac wasn't on any fucking drugs when he saw the ladder going up to fucking heaven and all these angels and shit on it? Do you think that when people were following Jehovah's column of cloud through the desert, they weren't on drugs? The whole fucking Bible was wrote by people on drugs. And then these fucking idiots, they won't accept anybody outside of their Jesus fraternity professing that they have encountered the supernatural, which could be coined as God and Jesus and all sorts of things. All I'm saying is in my discourses, my videos, and in my book, when I had this experience, very phenomenal variety of special experience, my mind instantly recognized that it was the tulpa, the egregore, the concept, the spirit of this thing who is called Jesus, or Yeshua, or Hermes Trismegistus, or Thoth, or, you know, on and on and on. You can go back in history and you can see that these tulpas were called different things. And so I don't doubt that there is a supernatural aspect to this thing. In actual fact, the vast majority of it's supernatural. There's only a very small part of it, and a very, very thin line of vibration that seems to create some physical matter. And so when you got idiots like that they believe that Jesus was walking on water, and that God is speaking to them from the clouds, and you know, people are raising from the dead and all this, but they wouldn't want to accept that just a man in the street, just someone like me, you know, is saying, yeah, Jesus spoke to me one time. and God's chastised me when I was, partaking in entheogens. And so what I want to ask these fools is, what do you think was going on in these tabernacles in the Old Testament? These tabernacles were tents where secret shit went on within them. And smoke could always be seen, white smoke could be seen from seeping outside of the gaps of this tent. And if anybody unauthorized tried to get in those tents, then they would die immediately by the hand of God. And so it was a great ritual, and there was a certain sect of secret society of priests who were responsible for the carrying and the caring of and the setting up and all the rituals that went on in this tabernacle. And apparently it was Moses who was instructed to build it under very, very strict criteria. And then ultimately it was Moses' brother's son who was left in charge, and I think it was the Levites or the Levitites or that certain sector of society who were the ones who were the tabernacle carers. Well, it is said that they used to burn frankincense and myrrh and other forms of resin. Well, I mean, you could very, very readily accept then that they were throwing on a few lumps of fucking cannabis. And that's what the white smoke was. And that's why it was so top secret. And that's why these priests were in positions of power, because they were using these entheogens to have these mystical visions and the mystical dreams and the downloads and the visions and all that. In my book, I write about some most incredible visuals that I had ever seen just on the tiniest bit of cannabis resin. I went back to ancient Mayan territory. I visited the pyramids of Giza. I went into the future, thousands and thousands of years into space, and I saw, as clear as I'm looking at anything now, a spaceship and a manufactured planet. And I've had so many supernatural experiences, and lots of them were on psychedelics, entheogens. Entheogen means to induce God, and so that's what they were doing, and that's what they've been using to this day, people. And any of these fools that don't think there was any psychedelics involved in seeing God. And you know, how many of these fools do you know that it will say to anybody who takes DMT or marijuana and had all these mystical, spiritual, religious kind of experiences? Oh, well, that's drugs. That's just drugs doing that to your head. That's not the real God. That's not my Jesus. And you go, well, who the fuck's your Jesus then? Your Jesus is just a figment of your fucking imagination. You want to take some drugs, cunt? Because when you take some fucking drugs, Jesus will stand fucking before your very eyes. You fucking muppets. And then you'll see what all this shit's about. It's all about the manifestation of psyche. When we allow our psyche to be free, and when we're not terrified of the reality of what we are, which is pure spirit, that's then when we have a relationship with pure spirit. And that's when we have a relationship with Jesus and with God and with Satan and with devils and demons and cherubs and all this. And I've had a relationship, I've seen them all. And so, and some of them I don't even need to take any fucking thing to be able to do that. I just need to put myself in a certain state of consciousness. And so when we look at the massive diversity of the so-called human being, we have to know, well, the human being is no different to anything else. If we look for varieties of grass, we would see that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of variety, and yet most people just think it's grass. That's the green grass, that is, and they think there's only one. But if you ever learnt about grass, you discover that there's a fucking myriad of grass. There's a myriad of everything. There is nothing which epitomises anything in particular. There is just a very vague idea of everything that we think is concrete and real. And then what I am speculating, and I've been speculating many things about the human being, what I'm saying now is that, look, This is what happened in the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, when God told Adam and Eve that they mustn't eat from that tree of good and evil, the tree of knowledge, it's just a metaphor, it's all allegory. And so they ate from it, and what happened? All of a sudden they realised they got dicks and pussy, and they became embarrassed. They was ashamed. Why were they ashamed? There's only them two around. They'd seen it all before. All of a sudden, why were they ashamed? What went on, people, was this. It was a transition between the non-thinking, the non-egoistic human beings into Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens means wise man. Now, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, they were humans. They weren't Homo sapiens, because they had a mind which was no different to any other animal. It was very instinctive, and it was driven from its survival needs. That's all that was going on. They never contemplated the way of the world or anything like this until they became awoken, when they became Homo sapiens. And what I'm saying is that I'm a Homo sapien. Some of you are Homo sapiens, but the vast majority of people, they're only human beings. And the human being is a non-awoken primate. And so I'm appealing to Homo sapiens on this channel, but because there's very few of us around, and you know what, I have never actually heard the distinction like I'm suggesting now, and this is why, you know, I just have to profess my own genius, because if I'm the first person to say this, and it isn't so outlandish and it isn't so absurd, it's just that it flies in the fuck faces of all these fucking fools that don't want to think that there's different species here. I'm telling you now, there's certain sectors of the world and certain cultures, the you-know-whos, they are a vastly different creature to the vast majority of people on this planet, because their sentience and their level of consciousness is just so many concentric circles outside of the Muppet, which is in, you know, the first or second one. And when I listen to these people and they speak about their Kabbalah, they speak about the Gnosticism, they speak about all different sorts of things like alchemy and so-called secret knowledge and all this sort of thing, well, this is what the whole world has been premised on. And this is, you know, one of the things that certain scientists are starting to get their heads around, that there was a group of people called the Essenes, and this was, you know, biblical times, pre-biblical times, and they lived in a certain way, and they had certain rituals, and they had certain belief systems, and all this, that and the other. And so what is presented to us in the Bible is just a fraction of all the stuff which was out there. And if anybody has any doubt about this, then we just have to wonder why the Vatican has over 2 million secret scrolls and scriptures under massive vault doors, never to be seen by the average Joe on this world. They are only for the super elite. And so the Vatican vault is nothing any different to the tabernacles of the time when the so-called fools were 40 years in the desert. Secret societies have always been about, and they're still about today. And the people that are within these secret societies are Homo sapiens, probably even, you know, a good few notches over and above my level. I don't know to what extent they could be higher, but because they were the ones that created all this different sort of Kabbalistic information and the alchemical, you know, stuff and symbolism and everything, well, to create it, you had to be fucking something. You were out there. But I can grasp, you know, a lot of it, and it's like when Carl Jung he was investigating alchemy and symbols and all this. He was a very intelligent person, and he managed to grasp some of it. But you could never grasp all of it, because you had to be the ones who created these symbols to really know what the essence of those symbols were. Because symbols just mean different things to different people. And so I could create a symbol. I could create 50 symbols, and I could label them X, Y, and Z. And then in 50 years' time, somebody could find my book with these symbols, and they'd go, "Whoa, this symbol's like, ooh, what was written here? What did this mean? I think this means this. I think that means that." Well, they're probably barking up the wrong tree. Probably nothing to do with how I'm perceiving them and creating them into be. You see, this is the whole thing. Life is a subjective experience. And so this is why that I'm saying that I don't think they're probably that more intelligent than some of us who can work this stuff out. We all can create stuff. And look what I'm doing now. I'm creating something now. And the chances are nobody's going to want to give it to any mind. They're not going to want to think about it a second, because they haven't heard it coming from a trusted source. But if you heard, scientists have just discovered that there are many varieties of human being, because that's the last thing. No. The Chinese are exactly the same as the Africans. Look at them. You can see that they're the same. Look into my eyes, you can't see any differences. There's no differences there. You see what's going on. And so can you imagine what sort of elitism this pertains to, when I'm saying that Homo sapien, which means wise human, wise man, is a species over and above the intelligence of human beings. Human beings, what the fuck does that mean? A human. It's something that looks like a man. A hue is a variance of a vision, isn't it? Different hues in colours. A hue. So a human. It looks like a man. So I think the people who named the human knew what the fuck they was talking about. They knew what I'm talking about. Because they can say that, oh, they're humans, they're a variety. And when you look, they are variety. There's like 4-foot Chinese, there's 7-foot fucking Africans. And there's the chalk and cheese, aren't they? So we're not just the human being, because if you said, I saw a human being on that continent, you'd want to know, well, what sort? A human being. No. There's not just one, there's a fucking myriad of them. Which one did you see? Which hue of man did you see? You see what I'm saying, people? Where have you heard this before? You haven't, have you? There you go then. So therefore, you might want to take on board what I'm saying about the Homo sapiens being vastly over and above. You see, we're walking in plain sight. I don't know why it is that I think about these things. I don't know why it is that my consciousness seems to be, exceedingly expansive. And then, I'm going to go in a supermarket and I'm going to see these ridiculous drones that don't even know they're fucking born. Last time I was in here, right, the computer system was supposedly down, and so they couldn't operate the computers. The only thing that wasn't down, by the way, was the digital cash out, beep, beep, beep. And so I said to one of the women that's always there, one of the cashiers, I said, can you see what's happening? They are preempting your disposal. Oh, yeah, right. I wish. And I'm like, well, you don't think there's any truth in that? And she just turned around and walked away, as if I could be indispensable. If I'm indispensable. If I am disposable. No, you are indispensable. Hang on, what the fuck's going on here? I am not indispensable. Indispensable. You see, when you look at indispensable, indisposable, why don't you just say indisposable? It means the same fucking thing. I'm not indisposable. You can't dispose of me, or you can dispose of me. I am not. Good God, you see, this is when you get into language. When you start looking at the root of it and the etymology, it becomes a very, very curious thing. Are you indispensable? I'm not indispensable. So I am disposable. So why don't they just say you're disposable instead of you're not indispensable? Is it because, oh, it's a bit more softer? Then you're disposable. I can throw you away the drop of a hat. You're not indispensable, you know. Oh, it's kind of like it makes you out to be something, but not super valuable. If you are indispensable, then it's kind of like, well, they could get rid of me, but not easily, because of my indispensability. But if you call them disposable, look, you're all disposable, right? And so don't getting out your fucking tree, because I'll let you go at the drop of a hat. Anyway, I digressed. There's a friend of mine, and he is about my age, approaching 60, and he has just started a course in English. And the reason why this person started a course in English is because he has the variety of mind that struggles greatly with the meaning of words. And he doesn't struggle greatly because he's got an intellect deficit. He struggles greatly because he's intelligent and because he looks at words and they just don't make fucking sense to him. It's like when we say that person's insane. Well, if you are insane, doesn't that mean you're in sanity? And so if you're in sanity, then you're sane. So why do you say that that person's insane when you are meaning that they're outside of sanity? Why don't you say they're outsane? That makes more sense, that they're outsane. They're outside of sanity. But you know, all these words, they're inverted. And language is designed like witchcraft to have power over you. And it's like these ancient Gnostic writings and the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah was originally written in Aramaic, which is the secret language of the Jews. And they wrote it using this secret coded language simply because they didn't want anybody to know what this stuff was. And so people that have created language, they've done it the same. And it's like when we say that we understand. You know me, I use understand in my book, so it doesn't keep wanting to correct me and tell me that my spelling's not correct. But I never use understand under normal circumstances. I use understand because I don't understand anybody. I'm not subservient to anybody. And, this understanding is all to do with legalese. It's to do with law. It's to do with the law of the seas, which is maritime law. And so when you say that you understand, you stand under somebody's jurisdiction. And when you go into a court, you go into a dock, and when your ship has entered into a harbour, it's berthed and it's coming down the berth channel and canal and all this sort of stuff. It's all maritime law, people. And so the language itself is witchcraft, and it's designed to confuse us, to bamboozle us, and to indoctrinate us. And then there is an overextension of the regular language called legalese, and that's the language of lawyers. And people say, oh, you've got to get a lawyer to understand that. We can't understand it. Well, when you read the law and you see how it's written in fucking the Aramaic style. It's written in a code that only they can understand, because they're using that tool against you. Because you don't fucking comprehend what they're saying, because you're not supposed to, because it's written in a code in a fucking silly way that people just go insane, because this isn't a normal way of writing things, is it? It's not written in prose. It's not written in basic language that can be easily understood. It's written in all different sorts of highfalutions and convolutions and twists and fucking quirks. And, the fool thinks that that's super intelligent language. Well, it's super intelligent in that it's fucking code to fool the fool. And so, but it's not super intelligent at all, because, people with half a brain, like some of you, you will look at that law and you just go, well, they've made it very, very difficult to understand. There's many more other ways that you could have said this fucking shit so we can all be privy to what's going on here, but they don't want you to be privy. They want you to spend hundreds of pounds an hour for those fucks to be able to interpret it very loosely for you. Anyway, got the supermarket ritual going on, and so I'll catch you guys later.